Does the Bible say the Bible is inspired? Hey everybody, I'm Dan McClellan. I'm a scholar of the Bible and religion, and the short answer is of course not. And the long answer is also of course not. But here are the reasons why. To begin, the Bible doesn't and cannot refer to the Bible because the Bible did not exist until after all the texts that would be included in the Bible were written. In other words, no one who wrote anything that ended up in the Bible ever knew of a delineated collection of texts that matches what we now understand as the Bible. And that is irrespective of the specific canon that you endorse. Now, in passages like 2 Timothy 3:16, we have a reference to higraphi, the writings or the scriptures. But in addition to the fact that this is a reference to the Jewish scriptures in 2 Timothy 3:16, the scriptures designated a much broader and more fluid and unbound category of writings in the first century CE and the early second century CE. The scriptures would not be understood to refer to a closed collection of texts until well after. So not only can the Bible not refer to the Bible, the reference that we have in 2 Timothy 3:16, which is ostensibly the reference to the Bible being inspired, is actually just a reference to the Jewish scriptures. Now, let's further consider what 2 Timothy 3:16 says. It says all writings, all scripture is theopneustos, which is traditionally understood to mean inspired, but that's not the Greek word for inspired. The Greek word for inspired is entheos, and that is used many times in early Jewish and non-Jewish literature to refer to something that God has inspired. Theopneustos literally means God breathed. And when we look in the use of this word in other Jewish and non-Jewish literature from the first and second century CE, it is used to mean God breathed in the sense of God breathed the breath of life into the first human. In other words, life-giving. So for instance, it is used in reference to streams of water. It is used in reference to sandals. It is even used in reference to ointments that are used to preserve the lifelike appearance of a corpse for 3 days after death, because in that time period, the spirit was thought to be able to return to the body and the person might come back to life. And so you wanted to preserve the lifelike appearance of the body. Even Israel, the nation of Israel, is referred to as theopneustos in some texts. And the word is never used in the first 2 centuries CE in a context where it must refer to inspiration. The first time the word is interpreted as a reference to inspiration is with Origen of Alexandria in the 3rd century CE. And he quotes 2 Timothy 3:16 dozens of times because he's trying to make the case that it means the scriptures are inspired. So theopneustos would not mean inspired as we understand it today until Origen altered the way people understood the word. When 2 Timothy 3:16 was written, the passage would have been understood to mean all scripture is life-giving. And then a final thing to consider is that the majority of scholars agree that 2 Timothy was not written by Paul. It was actually written by someone pretending to be Paul, probably decades after Paul was dead, either toward the end of the 1st century CE or more likely, in my opinion, the beginning of the 2nd century CE. And there are a number of reasons that scholars think that. But even if you did decide you were going to understand 2 Timothy 3:16 to refer to inspiration, and even if you did decide you were going to understand 2 Timothy 3:16 to refer to the Bible rather than just to the Jewish scriptures, it would still not actually be Paul himself saying that. It would be somebody who was pretending to be Paul, saying that in the hopes that you would think it was Paul, and so grant that statement the authority that they understood the Apostle Paul to have. So does the Bible say the Bible is inspired? Of course not. And the fit for this video has been Miles Morales.